Warning: this story destroyed a marriage, friendships, and lives. If you're not ready for the truth, don't keep watching. Let's begin. Throwaway, because my husband lurks Reddit, and I'm not in the mood for him weaponizing the comment section again. So, yeah, I cheated. Before everyone clutches their pearls, let me set the scene properly, because nothing is ever as simple as wife bad, husband sad, even though that's how he tells it now. We've been married 8 years, together for 12. No kids, on purpose. Decent money, boring suburb, matching coffee mugs from a wedding registry we forgot to delete. From the outside, we were one of those couples people point to and say, they've got it figured out. Inside, dead quiet, like emotionally beige. We didn't fight much, which everyone thinks is a good sign, but really it just meant we stopped bothering. First signs of trouble? He stopped noticing me. Not in a dramatic way, just little things. He'd ask how my day was while staring at his phone. He started going to bed earlier for his sleep schedule and left me alone scrolling until midnight. We had sex maybe once every 3 weeks, and it felt like checking off a task before returning a rental car. I'll admit this next part makes me sound bad, but I'm being honest. I started feeling entitled to more. Attention, desire, being wanted without having to schedule it like a dentist appointment. Then weird stuff started happening all at once. His dad got sick. My job did layoffs. Our neighbor died and left his cat screaming through the walls for 2 days. Life felt loud and pointless at the same time. Somewhere in there, I started lying. Small lies at first. Staying late at work when I wasn't. Saying I was tired when I just didn't want to sit next to him on the couch in silence. And before anyone asks, no, I didn't wake up one day planning to cheat. It happened the way these things always do, slowly, stupidly, and with me convincing myself it didn't count yet. At the time, I still thought I was in control. I was not. So here's where everyone's going to roll their eyes and say, of course it was a coworker. And yes, fine, it was a coworker, but not in the way you're picturing. Not at first. Don't get smug yet. His name was Mark, or Matt. Honestly, this already tells you how serious it wasn't at the beginning. He sat 2 rows over, brought in homemade lunches that smelled aggressively of garlic, and complained about his ex-wife like it was a personality trait. Thrilling stuff. What he did do was notice me. Like actually notice. He'd ask real questions and then wait for the answers. When I made a sarcastic comment in meetings, he laughed instead of blinking slowly like my husband did at home. I started timing my coffee breaks to overlap with his without fully admitting that's what I was doing. Here's lie number 1 for the record. I told myself it was just flirting. Harmless. A confidence boost. Something I deserved because my marriage had become a beige waiting room. Then came the texting. Strictly work-related, obviously. Except for the memes, and the "you okay" messages at 10:47 p.m., and the one time I sent a photo of my wine glass with the caption "surviving tonight," which was apparently code for "please pay attention to me." Unexpected event number 1. My husband actually noticed something before I thought he would. Not the cheating, God no, but the shift. I started guarding my phone like it contained nuclear codes. Face down, on silent, always within reach. He asked once, very casually, "Who are you texting so much?" And I smiled and said, "Group chat, you'd hate it." Lie number 2. He shrugged, but I could feel something click loose. You know that feeling when a shelf breaks but nothing falls yet? That. Around this time, my husband also started acting nicer, which was honestly inconvenient. He suggested a weekend trip, bought my favorite snacks without asking, asked if I wanted to watch something together. I resented him for that more than when he ignored me, which I know sounds awful, but it felt like he was interrupting a story I'd already started telling myself. Then the night that really mattered happened. And no, it wasn't sex yet. That's coming. This was worse, in a way. I told my husband I was staying late for a project deadline. Instead, I sat in my car with Mark in the office parking lot for nearly 2 hours, talking like teenagers, windows fogging up like a cliché I swore I'd never become. I went home, showered immediately, and told my husband I was exhausted. Lie number 3. What I didn't know was that this was also the week my husband had started paying closer attention. Not because he was suspicious yet, but because he felt me pulling away and didn't understand why. And when people don't understand, they start looking. If this were a movie, my husband would have discovered the affair through some dramatic text popping up at the worst possible moment. Or he'd follow me, or hire a PI, something sexy. Nope. He found out because of the printer. I wish I were kidding. Unexpected event number 2. Our home printer, an ancient demon held together by spite, ran out of ink. I was at work. My husband was home, trying to print some insurance form because his dad's hospital needed it right now. He logged into my laptop because his was dead, and it's basically the same anyway. Mistake number 1, I never logged out of my email. Mistake number 2, I synced everything. Mistake number 3, Mark, yes, Mark, I checked, had emailed me a calendar invite titled Drinks, finally. My husband didn't even go looking. It popped up in the corner like it wanted to be seen. According to him, because yes, we've talked about this part 1,000 times now, at first he genuinely thought it was spam. Then he opened it. Then he saw the thread. Then he scrolled. And oh boy, did he scroll. Now here's where I'm going to be honest in a way that makes me sound worse. I didn't explicitly say I'm cheating on my husband in writing. I wasn't that stupid. But I was stupid enough to write things like, I can't tonight. He's home. I wish I'd met you before. This feels dangerous but good. You don't need a confession when the vibes are doing all the talking. He didn't confront me right away. That's the part that still messes with me. He printed his stupid form, closed my laptop, and went about his day like a ghost. Made dinner, asked if work was busy, kissed my forehead like always. Lie number 4. I told him work was insane but productive. He nodded, already knowing the answer to a question he hadn't asked yet. What I didn't know was that later that night, after I fell asleep, he went through my phone while I was snoring next to him like an idiot. I'd gotten lazy, comfortable. I deleted the big stuff, but left enough breadcrumbs for a very clear trail. Texts, photos that were almost innocent. Inside jokes I never shared with my husband. A version of myself he wasn't invited to anymore. When he told me later how his hands were shaking so badly he had to sit on the bathroom floor, I rolled my eyes and said, "You're being dramatic." Lie number 5. He was not being dramatic. The confrontation didn't happen that night, or the next day. It happened 3 days later, after he'd already gone through shock, denial, rage, and whatever numb stage comes after that, all by himself. And when he finally did confront me, I didn't cry. I got defensive. The confrontation didn't happen in some explosive thrown plates kind of way, which honestly annoyed me at the time. He waited until a Tuesday night. No audience, no alcohol, no drama buffer. He asked very calmly, "Are you seeing someone else?" That was it. No yelling, no build-up, just that sentence, delivered like he was asking if we were out of milk. And here's where my mouth betrayed me before my brain could catch up. I laughed. Not a cute laugh, not a nervous one. A sharp, dismissive little ha, like he'd just accused me of stealing office pens. His face changed immediately, like something in him finally gave up trying to be gentle. I said, Where is this coming from? Lie number 6. He told me about the email, the phone, the texts. He didn't raise his voice. That somehow made everything worse. I felt cornered, and when I feel cornered, I get mean. I told him he was invading my privacy. Lie number 7. I told him it wasn't physical. Lie number 8. It was, just not yet. I told him if he'd paid attention to me, this wouldn't have happened. Lie number 9, but also the one I halfway believed. Unexpected event number 3. He started crying, like ugly crying. Hands over his face, shoulders shaking, completely wrecked. I had never seen him cry like that. Not when his mom died, not when his dad got sick. Something about that made me angry instead of sympathetic, which I know is awful, but it felt manipulative in the moment, like now I was supposed to comfort him. So I crossed my arms and waited it out. He asked me how long it had been going on. I said, a few weeks. Lie number 10. It was months. He asked if I loved the other guy. I said, don't be ridiculous. Lie number 11. I didn't love him, but I loved how I felt around him, and that felt dangerously close. At some point, he stopped asking questions. That's when I realized I'd lost control of the narrative. He wasn't trying to understand anymore. He was just absorbing. Later, he told me that was the moment something in him shut down, like a breaker flipping. At the time, I thought I'd won the argument because I hadn't cried, hadn't begged, hadn't admitted more than necessary. What I didn't realize was that while I was busy defending myself, he was quietly starting his own emotional free fall, one I wouldn't fully see until it was already done. I thought the confrontation was the worst of it. I was wrong. That was just the opening act. The days after were eerie. My husband didn't yell, didn't demand answers, didn't sleep on the couch in some dramatic protest. He just went quiet in a way that felt heavier than anger. He still went to work, still did dishes, still asked if I wanted coffee in the morning. But his eyes looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. This is where I'm supposed to say I felt guilty all the time. I didn't. Not at first. Unexpected event number 4. He started cleaning, obsessively. Closets, garage, old boxes in the attic, stuff that hadn't been touched since we moved in. It was like he was trying to reorganize his life by alphabetizing junk. At one point I asked, "What are you doing?" And he said, "If everything's clean, maybe my head will be." I told him he was overreacting. Lie number 12. He stopped touching me entirely. No goodnight kiss, no casual hand on my back when he walked past. It messed with me more than I expected. I'd been the one stepping out, but suddenly I was the one not being chosen. And that stung in a way I wasn't prepared for. One night I heard him throwing up in the bathroom, just dry heaving, over and over. I stood outside the door, debating whether to knock, and instead went back to bed and scrolled my phone. Yes, I hate myself for that part. When he finally started talking about his feelings, it came out sideways. He told me he felt stupid, that he replayed our entire relationship like a highlight reel, trying to spot the exact moment he failed. He asked if everyone at work knew, if they laughed at him, if Mark knew his name. I snapped, "Why are you making this about you?" Lie number 13, and also maybe the cruelest one. That's when his anger finally showed up. Not loud, cold. He told me he couldn't eat, couldn't focus, that he'd catch himself staring at walls for 10 minutes straight, that some mornings he woke up and forgot for half a second, and then remembered all over again. I watched all of this like it was happening to someone else's husband. I told myself he was being dramatic, that people survive worse, that marriages bounce back. What I didn't see yet was that while I was minimizing everything, he was quietly moving through the stages, shock, rage, grief, without me. And once someone processes something alone long enough, They stop needing you for it. That realization hit me a little too late. He told me on a Sunday morning. No build-up, no argument. Just dropped it into the space between us like a glass. He didn't care if it shattered. I've been looking at apartments. I actually laughed again. Reflex, defense mechanism, my greatest hit. I said, "You're not serious." Lie summer 14. This time I told it to myself. He didn't raise his voice, didn't even look at me. He was stirring his coffee like it had personally offended him. He said he needed somewhere quiet, somewhere without reminders, somewhere he could think without wondering who I was texting. Unexpected event number 5. I panicked. Real panic. Chest tight, hands cold, brain racing ahead to futures I hadn't planned for. Divorce lawyers, splitting friends, explaining things to our families, being the villain out loud instead of just online. So I switched tactics. I cried, hard, finally, big tears, shaky voice, told him I was confused, that I'd felt lonely, that I didn't know how things got so bad. I said the word mistake about 12 times like it was a magic spell. Lie nabanar 15, or maybe lie nabanar 15-5. I said I cut contact with Mark. I hadn't. I just muted the thread. My husband listened. That was the worst part. He always listened. When I finished, he said he believed I was sorry, but that being sorry didn't undo the images in his head, didn't give him back the version of me he thought he married. Then he said something I still hear in my sleep. "I don't know if I love you anymore. I just know I don't trust you." I told him we could fix it. Counseling, date nights, total transparency. I even offered him my phone on the spot like a peace offering. Unexpected event number 6. He didn't want it. He said, "I don't want to become the guy who checks." That was the first time I understood that his emotional journey wasn't about punishing me. It was about choosing himself, something he'd apparently never done in our entire relationship. By the end of that day, nothing was decided. No bags packed, no ultimatums. Just this horrible, quiet limbo where everything felt temporary and fragile. I went to bed that night and stared at the ceiling, realizing that for the first time since this started, I wasn't sure I was the one in control anymore. I should have cut Mark off completely after the apartment comment. That would have been the smart move, the decent move, the bare minimum move. I did not do that. Here's the unexpected part. Mark found out about my husband before my husband found out about Mark as a person. Not just a name on a screen, a real, inconvenient human with opinions. I slipped up, texted Mark from the wrong app while sitting 3 feet away from my husband on the couch. My phone buzzed. My husband glanced over. Nothing obvious, just my body language snapping tight like I'd been caught stealing. He didn't say anything then. He just filed it away. Later that night, Mark called me. Called. Who does that anymore? I panicked, answered in the bathroom with the fan on, and hissed at him to never do that again. He laughed and said, "Relax. I just wanted to hear your voice." That should have annoyed me. Instead, it made me feel chosen again, which tells you exactly how messed up my priorities were. Unexpected event number 7. Mark decided he was tired of being a secret. He started talking about us, about how I deserved better, about how my husband sounded emotionally unavailable, based entirely on the one-sided version I fed him. He asked when I was going to make a decision. I told him I needed time. Lie. 16. What I needed was for someone else to make it for me. 2 days later, my husband asked me point blank if I was still talking to him. No anger, just exhausted curiosity, like he already knew the answer and wanted to see if I'd tell the truth. I said no. Lie number 17. And here's the kicker. He nodded, said, "Okay," and dropped it. No follow-up, no checking my phone, nothing. That's when it hit me. He wasn't testing me anymore. He didn't care if I lied. He was collecting confirmation, not hope. The next morning, Mark showed up at my office, unannounced, standing there with coffee like he belonged in my life. My coworker raised her eyebrows. My stomach dropped through the floor. That night, my husband asked how work was. I said, fine, normal. Leitammerker 18, but he was already pulling away in ways I couldn't stop, making plans without me, sleeping on his side of the bed like there was an invisible wall, talking about next steps in the abstract, like I was already a chapter he'd finished reading. Mark thought this meant we were getting closer. My husband thought this meant he was getting free, and I was stuck in the middle, lying to everyone, including myself, while the clock kept moving forward whether I was ready or not. There's a specific kind of quiet that isn't peaceful. It's not calm. It's not even tense in a sharp way. It's just empty. That's what our house turned into. My husband stopped asking questions completely. No more, where are you going? No more, who's that? No more, can we talk? At first, I felt relieved. Like, okay, great. He's finally calming down. Maybe this is the acceptance phase. Maybe we're stabilizing. Lie number 19. I told myself this was a good sign. Unexpected event number 8. He started telling other people. Not dramatically. Not with a sob story. Just factually. His sister. One close friend. His mom. I found out because his sister texted me something like, I hope you're both taking space and getting support. Both. Taking space. I confronted him. Yes, I confronted him, and asked why he was telling people our private business. He looked genuinely confused and said, it's not private anymore. You made sure of that. I didn't have a comeback. I hated that. He also stopped reacting to me emotionally in any way that felt familiar. I could snap at him, cry in front of him, make passive-aggressive comments. Nothing landed. It was like throwing darts at a wall that had already been removed. One night I tried to initiate sex, not because I felt connected, but because I felt threatened. He froze, actually froze, then gently moved my hand away and said, please don't. That was worse than if he'd yelled at me. He told me later, because apparently this story gets more post-game commentary than the Super Bowl, that this was when he started accepting that the marriage he thought he had was gone, that whatever replaced it might look similar on the outside, but it would never feel the same. At the time, I thought he was being dramatic again. Lie Thalmerton 20. Meanwhile, Mark was escalating, talking about apartments near his place, asking if I wanted to meet his friends, saying things like, I'm not asking you to choose, but he absolutely was. And here's the part that makes me sound especially awful. I started resenting my husband for processing things too well, for not chasing me, for not begging, for letting go with dignity while I was still scrambling to control the fallout. The silence made me reckless, which is how we get to the night everything blew up in public. If you'd asked me before all this what my biggest fear was, I would have said, being embarrassed in public. Which is funny, because apparently I decided to speed run that one. Unexpected event number 9. My husband showed up where he absolutely should not have been. Mark had invited me out for drinks with some friends. I knew that was a bad idea. I knew it. But I was angry, lonely, and high on the kind of validation that feels like oxygen when you've been holding your breath too long. I told my husband I was meeting a coworker for a birthday thing, lie number to 21. We were at this loud bar downtown. Sticky floors, bad music, too many mirrors. Mark had his arm around me in a way that felt both thrilling and deeply stupid. I remember thinking, this is what choosing looks like, even though I still hadn't chosen anything. Then I looked up, and there was my husband, standing near the bar, frozen, like he'd walked into the wrong movie halfway through. Apparently his friend had dragged him out to get his mind off things. Same bar, same night, same stupid coincidence. No dramatic yelling, no scene like in a soap opera. Just this unbearable, suspended moment where all three of us realized exactly what was happening at the same time. Mark said, "Is that him?" My husband said my name, just once, quiet. I did the worst possible thing. I hesitated. That half second, looking between them, calculating, panicking, was apparently all my husband needed. He nodded to himself, turned around, and walked out without another word. Mark looked smug. That should have been my clue. I chased my husband outside, heels slipping, calling his name like it was going to rewind time. He didn't stop, didn't even turn his head. He just said, over his shoulder, "You've made your choice. Please don't follow me." People were watching. Someone laughed. A car honked. Life just kept going. I went back inside, shaking. Mark tried to kiss me like we'd just crossed some invisible finish line. I pulled away. For the first time since this started, I felt sick. Not guilty, not defensive, just hollow. Like I'd finally seen myself from the outside and didn't like what I saw. That was the night my husband emotionally checked out for good, and the night I realized that winning someone doesn't feel the same as losing someone who used to love you. He didn't come home that night. I knew because I stayed awake until 3 a.m., pretending to watch TV with the volume on low, like that would somehow keep the house from feeling abandoned. His side of the bed stayed untouched. His phone went straight to voicemail. No dramatic texts. No, "Where are you?" from him. Just absence. Unexpected event number 10. He didn't stay with a friend. He got a hotel, one near the hospital where his dad was, apparently. Neutral territory. No memories. He came back 2 days later to pack a bag. Not bags. A bag. Calm. Efficient. Like someone checking out of a place they'd already emotionally left. I tried to cry again. It didn't land the same. I tried to apologize, really apologize this time. But it sounded rehearsed even to my own ears. I tried to explain how confused I'd been, how everything spiraled, how I never meant for it to get this far. He said, "I know." Then, that doesn't change anything. He told me he'd signed a 6-month lease, said he needed distance to see clearly, said he wasn't filing for divorce yet, which I clung to like a life raft even though he never offered it as hope. Here's the part that still stings. He thanked me for finally being honest in public, said seeing it with his own eyes removed the last bit of doubt, that it hurt, but it also freed him. Freed him. I wanted to scream that I didn't mean to free him. That wasn't the plan. The plan was to feel wanted without losing everything else. The plan was control. Lidhammer 22. I told him I'd end things with Mark for good. He didn't ask for proof. He just said, "That's your business now." That sentence hit harder than any insult he could have thrown at me. When he left with his bag, the house felt bigger and emptier at the same time. I sat on the kitchen floor afterward, staring at the dent his suitcase wheel had left in the rug, realizing I'd finally pushed him past the point of negotiating. The thing nobody tells you about blowing up your marriage is how fast the other option turns into real life. Like, immediately. No grace period, no soft landing. Mark was thrilled when I told him my husband moved out. Thrilled. He hugged me like we'd just won something, kept saying, "I knew you'd choose yourself," as if that's what this was. I didn't correct him. Unexpected event number 11. I didn't feel relieved. I felt trapped. Suddenly he wanted everything. More texts, longer calls, weeknight plans. He started leaving his toothbrush at my place without asking. He talked about how much easier things would be once we were out in the open, as if openness was the missing ingredient and not, you know, basic decency. I realized pretty quickly that Mark liked the idea of me more than the reality. The idea was fun, flirty, stolen moments, no responsibilities. The reality was me crying in my car, snapping over nothing, checking my phone every 5 minutes, hoping, pathetically, that my husband might text. Mark hated when I brought my husband up, said it made him feel like a consolation prize, which was ironic, considering that's exactly what he was becoming. One night he made a comment about how my husband probably had it coming for being emotionally unavailable. Something in me snapped. I told him to stop, that he didn't get to rewrite my marriage to make himself feel better. We fought, a real fight, loud, messy, not fun or flirty at all. And that's when it hit me. I didn't actually want a future with Mark. I wanted an escape hatch, a mirror that made me feel attractive and interesting when my life felt small. Unexpected event number 12. Mark accused me of using him, which, annoyingly, wasn't entirely wrong. After he left that night, slamming my door like it was symbolic, I sat alone in the quiet and realized something deeply uncomfortable. I had lost my husband for a man I didn't even like that much. Meanwhile, my husband was doing something I hadn't expected at all. He was healing, not dramatically, not publicly, just steadily, and without me. That's when the regret finally stopped being abstract and started hurting in a very specific, very personal way. This is the part where I tried to be the good version of myself. Too late, obviously, but I still tried. I cut things off with Mark. For real this time. No muting. No, we can still be friends. I told him it was a mistake and that I needed to deal with the mess I made without dragging him through it. He didn't take it well, called me selfish, said I'd led him on, said I was scared of being alone. He wasn't wrong about that last part. Unexpected event number 13. My husband didn't care at all. I texted him, carefully, politely, like I was emailing HR, telling him I'd ended things and wanted to talk. Hours went by, then a full day. When he finally replied, it was one sentence: "I'm glad you're doing what you need to do. Not for us, for you." So I escalated. I wrote a long message about accountability and therapy, and how I was starting to understand my patterns, which, to be fair, I was. I told him I missed him, that I missed us, that I was willing to do the work. He agreed to meet me for coffee. I spent an hour getting ready like it was a first date, picked an outfit that said regretful, but still desirable, practiced being calm, vulnerable, honest. He showed up on time, looked lighter, not happy, exactly, but steadier, like someone who'd put down a heavy bag after carrying it too far. We talked, or rather, I talked. He listened. He always listened. Then he said something that completely derailed me. "I forgive you." I felt relief for exactly 2 seconds, until he added, "That doesn't mean I'm coming back." He told me forgiveness was for him, so he could move forward without bitterness, so he didn't carry this into the rest of his life. He said he didn't hate me anymore, but he also didn't trust me and didn't want to rebuild something that would always feel compromised. I accused him of giving up too easily. Lie Thomortem 23. He stood up, paid for his coffee, and said, "I stayed as long as I could." That sentence landed like a verdict. I found out he'd made the decision the same way I'd found out about a lot of things lately. Indirectly, and too late. Unexpected event number 14. I got an email from a lawyer before I got one from my husband. Nothing dramatic, no threatening language, just a clean, professional message about representation regarding marital dissolution, and a PDF attachment with my name on it like it belonged there. I stared at it for a long time before opening it, long enough to convince myself it might be a bluff, or a test, or something he was doing out of anger that he'd calmed down from once the shock wore off. Lai Tulgarn 24. When I finally called him, he answered on the second ring, which somehow made it worse. I wasn't trying to ambush you, he said. I just didn't want to talk you through it again. Again. Like we'd already had this conversation 100 times in different forms. He told me he wasn't angry anymore. That was his big update. He said the anger burned hot and fast, and once it burned out, there was just clarity underneath. That staying married to me would mean constantly managing doubt, and he didn't want that kind of life. I asked if there was anything I could do. Counseling, time, space. I even suggested a trial separation like it was some kind of compromise instead of what we'd already been doing. He said, I already tried staying. That was it. No dramatic speech, no list of grievances, just a statement of fact. After the call, I did something very on brand for me. I told people a softened version of the truth, that we'd grown apart, that the timing was bad, that we both made mistakes. I left out the parts that made me look as bad as I actually was. Lai Wagner 25. At night, though, when it was quiet and there was no one left to convince, I couldn't escape the realization that this wasn't something that happened to me. It was something I set in motion and then lost control of. The weirdest part? He wasn't cruel about any of it. He didn't punish me. He didn't trash me to mutual friends. He just chose a life without me in it. And that hurt more than if he'd screamed. Divorce is mostly paperwork and waiting. That surprised me. I expected more drama, more finality. Instead, it was emails, signatures, calendars filling up with deadlines that made everything feel bureaucratic instead of emotional. Unexpected event number 15. The world didn't end. It just went on without him. Friends picked sides quietly. Some drifted, some stayed but looked at me differently, like they were recalculating who I was in real time. His sister unfollowed me on everything. My mom asked too many questions and then switched to pretending nothing happened. My dad said, "People screw up," and I couldn't tell if that made me feel better or worse. The house felt wrong. Too quiet, but also too honest. No one to perform for. No one to lie to except myself. And even that stopped working after a while. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to text him about something stupid, and then remember there was no him anymore. Just a number I wasn't supposed to use. Here's the part I didn't expect. I started replaying his emotional journey more than my own. The shock. The way his face changed when he realized it was real. The slow, careful way he detached, not to hurt me, but to survive. I used to think acceptance meant giving up. Now I see it was the strongest thing he did. I tried dating. That was a mistake. I brought too much baggage to the table and got irritated when strangers didn't know how to carry it properly. I kept comparing everyone to a man who no longer belonged to me, which felt unfair and pathetic all at once. At some point, I stopped telling the softened story and started telling the real one, to myself at least, that I lied because it was easier than being honest, that I liked attention more than accountability, that I confused feeling wanted with being loved. No redemption arc, no sudden wisdom, just uncomfortable clarity. There's one part left. The conclusion everyone asks for. What he learned, what advice he'd give, and what I'm left with now that the story's actually over. We don't really talk anymore, not in any meaningful way. Logistics only, paperwork, the occasional necessary update. He's polite, distant, like someone who once knew you very well and now prefers not to remember how. The last real conversation we had wasn't dramatic, no closure speech, No final argument, just a quiet moment after signing the last set of documents, when we were standing outside the office and neither of us knew where to look. I asked him, because I needed to know, because I always need to know, what he'd learned from all this. He thought about it for a long time. Then he said something that still makes my stomach drop when I replay it. I learned that love isn't enough if trust is gone, and that staying with someone who keeps hurting you doesn't make you loyal. It makes you disappear. That was it. No lecture, no advice aimed at me, just a statement he'd clearly made peace with. Later, through a mutual friend, I heard the advice he gives now when people ask him about relationships. He tells them to pay attention early, to not explain away patterns, to believe actions faster than words, and, this one stung the most, to walk away the first time they realize they're shrinking to keep someone else comfortable. As for me, I learned something too, even if it took losing everything familiar to see it. I learned I'm very good at lying when the truth threatens the version of myself I want to believe in. I learned that being bitchy, defensive, and clever doesn't protect you from consequences. It just delays them. And I learned that control feels a lot like confidence until the moment it fails completely. If you're reading this because you're the husband in this story, I won't insult you by pretending I have wisdom for you. Listen to your gut. If you're the wife or the partner telling yourself it's harmless, temporary, or deserved, it isn't. It's a choice. And choices don't stay small just because you want them to. This isn't a redemption post. I don't get a neat ending. He moved on. I sit with what I did. That's the truth. No edits.